Good afternoon or morning, everyone, depending where you are. Um, my name is Jen Scumaci. I am with SME Strategy. I am a senior facilitator and the manager of our strategy and leadership community. I see a few familiar names and faces here. So glad to have you all with us today. And we're just going to take one more moment to see who else joins. And as we do that, I'm going to invite y'all to please pop into the chat a little bit about who you are, where you are, what you do, anything of that nature, why you just decided to come to this webinar today. Go ahead, and we're just going to take a 2 or 3 minute ease in, I guess, to today's webinar, just to give some people a chance to join and have y'all get to know each other a little bit. So in that name, I'll share a little bit about me as you all are sharing some information about yourselves in the chat. Again, my name is Jen Scumaci. My pronouns are she, her. I am a senior facilitator at SME Strategy, and I also get to manage this wonderful online community that we've relaunched this year after it's been around for about 3 years or so and has ebbed and flowed with for various reasons. And we have relaunched this year and are going strong, and super excited for those of y'all who have joined that. Kathy, welcome, project manager from Phoenix Children's Hospital Foundation. That's awesome. Glad you're here. Glad everyone's here. A little bit more about me. So I got my Master of Higher Education from UMass Amherst. I am currently located in Greater Boston, just north of Boston, actually, in New Hampshire. And I did get my MBA from the University of New Hampshire while I was working in the corporate world for a while. I've been doing strategy work for about 23 years now. Actually, next year will be my 24th year. And so very excited to share whatever I've experienced and learned along the way with you all today, specifically in relation to the topic of this webinar, which is engaging your stakeholders ahead of strategic planning. So psyched that you're here today to listen to a little bit of what we know at SME Strategy and share what you know as well. So in the name of sharing, going back to the chat here for a second, Rick is the Director of Quality for Insight Technology Solutions in Virginia. First time here. Great. Thanks for joining us, Richard. Glad you're here, or Rick. Lori is with a financial institution where she works in process improvement in Ohio. Hello, Ohio. Good morning. Still morning for you, I think. And then we've got Jay Palmer. Hey, Jay, it's good to see you again. And cool, you are looking to kick off your strategy session. That is fantastic. I've seen you around the community, and I know you've joined us for a few of these webinars. So hopefully you keep coming back, because we got some good stuff to help you launch this strategy session. So, and that goes for all of y'all. Anything we can do at SME Strategy to help connect you to each other and help you tackle the challenges of being someone responsible for strategy or leadership in an organization. So that's why we're here, and happy to serve in that role. So a little bit more about us. We specifically do focus on strategic planning, although we have a wide variety of services and topic areas that we are experted in. And so the primary mechanism or way that we share what we know and help other organizations is by helping them create and implement their strategic plan. So we facilitate strategic planning meetings, we lead training workshops, we provide executive coaching, and we have a slew of digital offerings. If you've not yet gone to our website, I strongly encourage you to do so. It's SMEstrategy.net. And at that website, and I will actually pop that into the chat for you as well. On that website, you will find a resources tab where you can see our blog, our podcast, and a ton of other resources that we provide to people free, to help you along on your path. And if you're looking for an extra little kicked up notch of support, that is why we offer our online digital community as well, that I've referenced a couple times. So our strategy and leadership community is accessible. Again, if you go to the resources tab and click on strategy and leadership community under there, you'll find the link to join. I'll also pop that into the chat. And our digital community is a place where we invite leaders to connect with each other and to connect with us to keep these conversations going. And it's a really good place where people can get some asynchronous support, where they can, sort of drop a challenge, post about something that's going on in their work, and be able to have right now, our community is almost 400 members strong. So you've got the eyeballs and ears of, almost 400 other strategy leaders if you join that community. So strongly encourage you to check that out. And actually, I will go ahead and drop the link to that in the chat here as well. So just one moment while I pull that up. And if you haven't yet, if you've just joined us and you haven't yet introduced yourself, please do so in the chat. We've got a lot of great people here. We are global again. We've got UK represented. We've got some folks here in the US, which is also where I sit, which is awesome. And actually, SME Strategy is primarily, our headquarters are located in Vancouver, and Canada. So we do this work that we do everywhere globally. We offer our services both in person and online. And we have conducted helped over 200 organizations design their strategic plans. We are industry agnostic, which not only helps us to navigate any business, any situation, but also helps us to have an objective view on helping teams move through their most significant challenges or just the creation of strategies to move their organizations forward. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about us. And I've learned a little bit about you in the chat, but I'd like to learn more. So today's topic is called engaging your stakeholders ahead of strategic planning. And so we are going to talk specifically about that topic. And I'd like to know a little bit more about your experience here and what your stakeholder engagement currently looks like. So I have a poll that I've just launched, and I'm going to invite you to answer these 3 questions. The first is, or not answer these questions, but confirm your answers in response to these statements. So the first statement is, we know who our stakeholders are. And so this means at your organization, do you know who your stakeholders are? Yes, yes, somewhat, not sure, or no. The second statement is, we know how to engage our stakeholders in strategic planning. So this is, getting at, do you actually have the knowledge internal to your organization? If you know who your stakeholders are, do you know how to actively engage them in your strategic planning? And then lastly, do you actively engage your stakeholders in your strategy? And so I'd love to just give you a moment to think about this. It looks like right now, 100% of y'all are saying, yes, we absolutely know who our stakeholders are. We don't fully know, we only somewhat know how to engage them in strategic planning, and we somewhat actively engage them in our strategy. So that's out of 4 responses so far. Let's see, I know we've got 9 people. That's about half people have responded at this point, but I'll just leave this open for another 30 seconds or so and give you all the chance to respond here to see if we have any other information come through. But this is really giving me a great idea of who y'all are and how stakeholder engagement in relation to strategic planning works for y'all currently. So right now, again, it looks like about 83% of y'all fully know who your stakeholders are. And then there's it looks like one person who somewhat knows in their organization. And then that somewhat, it seems to be the response to, we know how to engage our stakeholders in strategic planning. 100% of y'all are saying that it's somewhat. Same with actively engaging, somewhat not sure. So I think you're at the perfect webinar, given your responses here. I'll go ahead and share those results so that you can see them. And just to note for y'all, so this recording, I am recording this session. This recording and the associated slides will be shared online as a follow-up. So no need for you to have to record on your own or take screenshots, although please, if you want to take screenshots, go for it. But please know that we will email out a follow-up recording with these slides as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and dig into the actual session content. Here are our goals for today. Number one, and always, our goal with our webinar series, which we do host monthly, is to connect you to each other. Excuse me, and that's my major focus in my role at SME Strategy, to connect leaders from various organizations to each other to help create some synergies in how we all approach our work. My second goal for today's session with y'all is to understand the importance of stakeholder engagement in the strategic planning process specifically. And then lastly, to introduce tactics for effectively engaging stakeholders in the strategic planning process. So let's go ahead and start with the definition. So what is a stakeholder? And I want to make sure that we really differentiate stakeholder from the general public. Okay, because some organizations really feel that they serve everyone, or that everyone has a stake in what they offer. And 99% of the time, that's just not true. The stakeholders for your organization are those people or groups of people who have interest or influence within your organization. So it's not everyone. It's not the public. It's people and groups of people internally, like your employees, your volunteers, board members, your executive team, however you might group people internal to your organization. Those are stakeholders. Externally, your stakeholders could be your customers, constituents, the government, vendors, partners, funders, etc. People who don't work for your organization or contribute to your organization as a volunteer in that capacity, but people who are external to it, who hold a stake in the success of your organization. So flowing off of that definition, here's what we mean by stakeholder engagement. Actively seeking stakeholder perspectives during planning and actively inviting stakeholder participation and feedback in implementation. So we're specifically today going to discuss stakeholder engagement in strategic planning and implementation. So my question for you all is, why is that important? And I'd love for, again, just pop into the chat a word, a phrase, a sentence, whatever's on your mind. When you think of the question, why is stakeholder engagement important in the context of strategic planning? Why are we even holding this webinar? Why would we even want to talk to our stakeholders about the process of strategic planning or the content of our strategic plan ahead of it? Okay, great. So I'm seeing some responses roll in here in the chat. Lori says for buy-in, absolutely. Support, similar to buy-in, yes. To ensure success, yeah, for sure. Through the buy-in and to have insights, future growth, absolutely. Getting that input, those inputs from people can help supply insights that maybe you don't have. Stakeholders have a different view. Absolutely. Exactly, Rick. They can tell us when we are being stupid. Yeah, for sure. I actually kind of wish I just had like a little stakeholder here all the time to tell me that. Just whisper in my ear when I'm being stupid. But no, for real, they do different stakeholders who sit at various positions within or outside of your organization hold different perspectives and inputs, and can help you see blind spots. Absolutely. So y'all already know why this is important. So here's a list of why we know it's important here at SME Strategy. When you engage your stakeholders effectively in your strategic planning process, it's taking into consideration their needs, desires, perspectives, and input. It's fostering that sense of buy-in, that connection, that trust, that confidence, for sure. I know that you all know this, but anytime someone directs a process onto you versus involving you in that process, for me personally, I'm less engaged and less bought in when I'm directed. When I'm involved and engaged in designing, helping, giving feedback, I'm more confident, trusting, and bought into that process. Involving your stakeholders also helps to mitigate potential risks and conflicts. So if you don't engage your stakeholders on the front end, there's an increased chance that on the back end, they won't be on board with what you design. There could be uncertainty, dissatisfaction. You might be creating enemies in the process by leaving people out, even if it's unintentional, right? So in order to get ahead of that, you want to make sure people are aligned, are engaged, are open to change, or at least are open to talking about change and planning for it, right? So involving people on the front end of your strategic plan, your stakeholders on the front end of your strategic plan, can mitigate all of that good stuff. Supporting strategic efforts in general, again, the more stakeholders that are engaged in supporting your overall strategic efforts, the more successful typically those efforts will be. There's actually research that has shown that. And overall, involving your stakeholders helps to improve organizational alignment. You can have a real pretty strategic plan, but if you don't have the overall organizational alignment to carry it forward, it's just going to sit on the shelf as a pretty plan. So y'all got this, very similar to some of the responses you shared in the chat. But what I want to do is also just really pinpoint why proactive stakeholder engagement is important. So involving people proactively helps. I'm sorry, if you do not engage people proactively, you risk having people be unaware of what's going on. And you personally risk being unaware of desires, needs, experience, education, expertise that exists around you. Again, it could lead to disengagement, apathy, misalignment, and you also do risk the potentially losing impactful insights, themes, trends, ideas that could help your strategic direction, help you identify it, and help you move it forward. So I think we all understand. Oh, wait, actually, I guess we don't, because I have one more thing I want to say about it. So here's the bottom line. Ultimately, you want to develop a strategic plan that will get real change and make real change happen, right? We don't create a strategic plan to stay status quo. I've never experienced that personally. Every time we create a strategic plan, it's in the name of changing something, moving toward a direction, having a strategy to move forward into the future. And so to drive real value and real change for your organization and for the people who your organization serves, you need to have long-term commitment and strong support throughout your organization. You need the buy-in of your people, your stakeholders, and people will typically not buy into organizational strategies that they don't see themselves in. So again, don't make your strategic plan be something that just sits on the shelf, a pretty document that you can personally be proud of that you created. Make your strategic planning process an iterative process of engagement, and you will see much more success, much more fruits will come from that labor. It is a labor, but you will see the benefits of it for sure. And so we're going to talk in the remaining time we've got together about how. And as we continue to do this and move through our session here, please don't hesitate to drop comments, questions, thoughts into the chat. I will pay attention to it best as possible and address what it is that you want to share with us. So as I said earlier, I want to share some tactics that at SMA strategy we have used with clients, and we know have been successful in in engaging stakeholders in the strategic planning process, and specifically ahead of the process. So one of the things that we highly encourage our clients to do is, first of all, take stock of your stakeholders. Sit down with your executive team, your management team, whomever is leading your strategic planning process, and map out who your stakeholders are, and that will help you determine how you will engage them. So we use a pretty simple matrix of interest and influence. So along the y-axis here, you see stakeholder interest. And along the x-axis, you see stakeholder influence. So where you have stakeholders that have a high level of interest, but a low level of influence within your organization, you're going to want to make sure you inform them completely and monitor your relationships with them closely. These are the people that are going to be knocking on your door, asking questions, send an email. They're the people who are talking about your organization to other people because they are high interest, but they may not have a ton of influence within your organization. That's okay. You still want to engage them because you still want to understand their interest. You want to understand what they're saying, why they're interested, what their motivation is, and you want to make sure they remain engaged with you. Okay. On the upper right, you see high interest, high influence. So these are those holders who are highly interested in the work your organization does and have high influence to impact your organization, its direction, etc. So these are the people that you are absolutely going to want to regularly engage and make sure that they feel engaged. Keep satisfied doesn't mean give them everything that they ask for or talk about. It means make sure that they feel heard. Okay. On the bottom of this matrix, you see low interest, low influence on the bottom left. For these people, this is where I think it's okay to loosen up the engagement reins a little bit. You still want to keep them engaged, but you do not need to have the same level of engagement as with your high influence, high interest people. These are your folks who probably are going to be happy with you just sharing information with them that's essential as it happens, and doing check-ins essentially as they need to happen. And then lastly, low interest but high influence. So this could be true sometimes of people who have been on a nonprofit board maybe for a long time. That's just an example where maybe they've been on a board for 10 years and the interest is sort of waning, but they still hold a position of influence. These are going to be people who you really truly again want to keep very engaged. Anticipate their needs, talk with them, monitor their needs, their input, and really make sure you stay in contact with them. So this is just a sort of quick and dirty matrix you can use to get started in framing all of your stakeholder engagement prior to strategic planning. Identify by name who the people or groups are that fall into each of these 4 categories. And that helps to frame for you, A, who are your stakeholders, but B, where are the ones that we need to design special tactics to engage, and where are the ones who need less of a touch, right? Doing this really helps kick off your process and frame it, all together. If this is something that you're interested in and you get stuck, join the community or reach out to me directly. We have a lot of great resources, and in fact, we have whole 2-hour sessions that we lead teams through to help them map their stakeholders to determine the most effective engagement. So lots of more information there, but we offer this to you all today as the first of a few tactics in how to engage. Before you can know how to engage, you got to know who to engage and sort of map that out. Okay, I see a question come through. To make this meaningful versus a box-ticking exercise, and the sort of key questions we should be asking to maximize engagement. Okay, so Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying is, are you looking for us to provide you key questions to maximize engagement? If so, we can address that as a follow-up, but I do have some more tactics that I want to share that might actually help you think through what those questions could be for your organization. Okay, so hold that thought and let's see if we get your question answered as we continue moving through here. So tactic number 2 is to engage your stakeholders at every point in the process, but especially on the front end of it. It does become difficult when organizations have an executive team or a leadership team that creates a strategic plan and then informs their stakeholders about the plan. And the stakeholders didn't know what was happening on the front end. It's really, really, really important, if you want that conversation of showing the plan as it's been created, if you want that conversation to go well, you got a better chance of that happening if you're involving your stakeholders on the front end. Okay, so what you'll want to do is tell them, hey, this is what we've got going on. This is the plan for creating the plan. This is the process we're going to use. This is when it's going to happen. These are the mechanisms we're using to collect input. This is who's involved. Be transparent. Be as transparent as you possibly can in informing your stakeholders about what the planning process will look like. And in that, and so Jay, this kind of gets, I think, at least one little nugget of your question answered. One of the conversations you should be having with your stakeholders is what they can expect in terms of communication or updates. So tell them what you're going to tell them, then actually tell them, deliver that information and those updates as you promised. And then on the back end, follow up. Make sure they have a true understanding of what you shared. Answer their questions, address their concerns. It's not your job to make everyone agree with what's in your plan. It's your job to do everything you can to achieve alignment around the essence of your organizational direction. And those are two very distinct approaches, okay? If you're the person responsible for strategic planning in your organization, make sure you know who your stakeholders are. Make sure you tell them it's happening. Make sure you address their questions and concerns as they come up, and then follow up to ensure that understanding. Consistency is really the key here. So again, Jay, I hope that answered your question just a little bit, and I hope that offering that helps everyone. Tactic 3 in this: consider the diversity of your stakeholders. Even after you've mapped out your groups, if you use that matrix and have 4 distinct groups of stakeholders, even within those groups, there is tremendous diversity. So you're going to want to consider things in terms of collecting input like connectivity and device access. Are you potentially sending out an online survey, and maybe the people who are, maybe there's a particular group of stakeholders who might not have access to a computer or a cellular device or something of that nature? Consider accessibility. Consider intercultural differences in communication. Some people prefer an email, some people prefer a phone call. Really getting to know your stakeholders and not as monolithic groups or groups of monolithic people is super important, to be able to understand that there are various ways people learn, listen, and communicate back. It's really important as leaders that we take that into consideration as we're engaging our stakeholders. And then, there might be some accommodations you might need to make. Again, age, ability, language, accessibility to devices. I mean, whatever the instance is, this is just a really important tactic that we have found to be extremely helpful for some of our clients, that even after you map out who your stakeholders are, really, just understand that even within those categories, there's diversity in how you'll need to communicate with them. Okay, tactic number 4 is to create a mechanism to track, monitor, and report on stakeholder relationships. Okay, one of your goals in the strategic planning process should be to strengthen your stakeholder relationships across the board. And the best thing you can do in the name of that is to be transparent. Make your entire process transparent. Let everyone know what's happening, when it's happening, and why it's important. And the more transparent your process is, the less questioning, the less secrecy, the less misalignment, the less apathy. All of those risks are mitigated simply through being transparent in your communication about the process. And by the way, when you're transparent about your process and when you are tracking, monitoring, and continually improving your stakeholder relationships, you're modeling a culture of engagement. All right. We cannot say as leaders that we want people to feel seen and heard and then not see or hear them. Okay, we can't expect people to feel like they're part of our organizational growth if we don't involve them in the process of laying out the pathway to that organizational growth. Sometimes, honestly, it's just a simple flip in our own expectations about how we move through the process that can help bring people along with us. Okay. And so oftentimes, I've heard the phrase a lot, everything rises and falls on leadership. I don't disagree with that. A good portion of how a strategic planning process goes is dependent on how the leader of that process engages the people in the organization to make it happen. So some tough love and accountability there, but really important for us to check ourselves in this process. And sometimes, we're human. We just want things to succeed. And so we just move forward. Okay. What I'm inviting you to do in these tactics is take a step back, right? So tactic 1 was all about taking a step back, looking at who are your stakeholders to start, right? And then considering their diversity, considering when and how you engage them, being transparent, being consistent. This is all really about how we act as leaders of these processes. Okay, and so on that name, tactic number 5. And Jay, this also I think maybe hits at your question a little bit, but I'm going to come back to it in just a moment again. But tactic 5 here is, if you don't know how to best engage your stakeholders, ask them. Ask them, what would make you feel engaged in this process? Hey, we've got this strategic planning process coming up. We're starting to develop a 3-year plan. What kind of information would you want to know to help you feel engaged as part of that process? Right? It's just a simple question. A lot of times we don't want to let people know what we don't know. But I'm here to tell you, y'all, it's okay to not know. Okay. And especially when it comes to people, not assuming that we know exactly how someone wants to be engaged with, and demonstrating that humility of asking them can really go a long way in getting their buy-in into the process. So we strongly encourage that you talk to your people, you listen to them, you validate their perspectives. Okay. You're asking them to engage, to collect their perspectives. So it's really important that you share that those perspectives are valid and valuable to your process. And then again, it's our job as leaders to set expectations and boundaries accordingly. You might have a stakeholder who says, well, I want to get a weekly email update. And you might have to say, okay, well, given the way the process is set up, that's not something that we can do. So I want to adjust your expectation there. Here's what we can do instead. Does that seem like a reasonable way to communicate with you? Okay, so really at its essence, stakeholder engagement is about taking the focus off of you and putting the focus onto engaging and collecting the input of other people who hold a stake in your organization's success. So in the chat, again, I just want to come back to a question that Jay posed for us. So he's saying, what are the key questions we should be asking to maximize engagement? I'm going to give y'all a little freebie, I guess, here. And it's not rocket science, but we use the same exact process. I will tell you, we get hired a lot by clients to run stakeholder engagement processes or sessions. Oftentimes, our process is a combination of live in-person sessions facilitated on site, or live sessions facilitated virtually, where stakeholders join a webinar like or a Zoom meeting like this. And we ask 4 questions if it's on the front end of strategic planning. We ask, what's working well in your organization currently? What's not working well, or what do you think could work better? When you close your eyes and think of this organization being the most successful it can be 3 years from now, what does that vision of success look like? And lastly, what in your view are the first step, or are the first couple steps in getting to that vision that you see? So what that does is it helps us pull out of stakeholders the perspective of the current state of the organization. So asking them what's going well and what's not what isn't going as well really helps to create that current state picture, and can absolutely directly translate into a SWOT analysis in the front end of your strategic planning process. Asking them what they then see as their vision for the organization and next best steps or best next steps gets us to the future state, and helps us understand where our stakeholders think we should go big picture, and what tactical items they see as immediately in our future. Okay, so that's it. It's not, like I said, rocket science or brain surgery. It's 4 simple questions, and we facilitate dialogue and conversation around that. And then for our clients, we collect that feedback and we provide it to them as inputs into their strategic planning process. We also similarly, so in addition to running a stakeholder engagement session, we also offer surveys. And those surveys dig a little bit deeper and ask a few more questions, but same general idea. Trying to gauge from them, how do they see things going currently, and how do they see things, where do they want to see things going in the future? So Jay, I don't know if that's too easy or too simplified for you. But quite honestly, it doesn't have to be much more complicated than that. Just asking your people where they see the organization and where they see the organization going really can be enough. And think about it. If you're a large organization, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of inputs. Synthesizing, even just asking a few questions, can really be a lot of work. So I would just caution you to use whatever strategy would work best given your organization, whatever questions would work best. If you have specific questions you're trying to answer in your strategic planning process, not a bad idea to throw those out to stakeholders and see what they say, and then use that input as you're developing your strategic plan. Okay, you can always leave input out or throw away input that doesn't fit, or back shelf or park it. But you can't create input from places that it doesn't exist. So the only way you're going to know is to ask, and it's always better to have more than not enough. On that note, a few pitfalls to avoid that we've seen clients fall into, and we want to just share with you in the instance that it helps you to avoid them as well. So again, I really strongly suggest telling people ahead of the process what your intentions are in terms of what you're going to tell them, how you're going to update them. So a pitfall to avoid is, well, then don't not deliver on those communications. Okay. Tell them what you're going to do, then do it. Easy as that. Another pitfall to avoid is relying on one-way communication. Sending an email is fine. Putting a poster up is fine. Sending a memo is fine. Having a town hall where you announce a new strategy is fine. But all of those are push communications, where the communication's one way from you to them. If you only rely on that in your strategic planning process, you are dead in the water. Okay, so you really need to employ two-way communications whenever possible, one-way communications whenever that's appropriate. Another pitfall to avoid assuming the same level or type of engagement tactics will be effective for all stakeholders. Again, this is how stakeholder mapping can really assist you on the front end. If you can really categorize your groups, then you can come up with the best ways to engage each of those groups uniquely. And then the last couple points, communicating or engaging strong out of the gate and then fading away. So I kind of like to think about this almost as like ice cream. So you start out as a scoop, and then if you all of a sudden then turn into a puddle, you don't have ice cream anymore. You've just got milk. So don't be ice cream. Sure, you could go back and refreeze it. I get it. But be consistent, engage strong out the gate, and stay strong. But only you know what strong looks like, okay? Because you set those expectations and those boundaries on the front end. And then lastly, we've seen this unfortunately with a lot of organizations that sometimes leaders tend to avoid stakeholders because they anticipate that they'll be difficult. Again, I'm going to challenge you to really step up in a situation like that. If you know someone might be a difficult person to engage with, it might be worth it for you to just invest that little bit of time to still have these conversations with them. Again, your situation and how you handle it's dependent on what you've got going on. But certainly we encourage confronting and holding difficult conversations, straight on, and really, engaging people who are difficult so that you can hold them a little bit closer, understand their perspective a little bit more, and engage with them a little bit better than if you were to avoid them. Okay, so those are our tactics. These were our pitfalls. And now I'm going to turn to the chat. We've got just about 20 minutes left in our time together. We usually do wrap these a little bit before an hour, but let's go ahead and turn to the chat and see what y'all are asking or saying. Okay, so I see a question. How to compile the inputs received from various stakeholders and how to filter which one work and which one won't. Is there a framework? Okay, great question. So if I can just reframe it slightly, it sounds like if you have a lot of stakeholder inputs, it sounds like there's two questions. Number one, how do you compile those? Okay, so I can just tell you the way we do it at SME Strategy and the way that we encourage our clients to do so. So as I said, oftentimes we use a survey in conjunction with what people might call a focus group or a visioning session. So the survey data, we cull through responses and pull out any themes that we see. So if someone says communication's going well and someone else says communication's going well and someone else says communication's going well, we pull that together and we say, okay, we heard a clear theme that communication's going well. So that's, part one is just showing the themes. Now, maybe you do have maybe you have a session of 20 people. Maybe 3 of them say communication's going well and 3 of them say communication isn't going well. It's a weakness. Okay, so I think that brings to question the second half of this question, which is how do you filter which piece of input to bring forward, right? So again, I'll tell you how we would handle it. We would say 3 people told us it's going well, 3 people told us it's not going well at all. Here you go, strategic planning team, let's unpack this. Okay, and so that is going to look completely different depending on your organization and depending on other input in context, right? So it might be going back to the people who say it isn't working well and asking what exactly is not working well. Why? What do you think? What's going on, right? Following up with more two-way communication and collecting more information. Likewise, going to the people who said it's a strength. Why? Why do you think it's a strength? What exactly is going well? What about our communication is working? And so oftentimes when you go back and ask for more details, or when you go back and ask for more behind the why, you will get more clarity on what the actual piece of input is. The more clarity you have on the input, the more clearly you'll see which pieces of input will bring you forward and which ones won't. Okay, so really, again, I don't think there's a trick here or a specific formula. This is simply, high quality leadership, engaging your stakeholders, asking them for their input, taking that input and, just really organizing what themes you're hearing, and then bringing that information forward to your strategic planning team to ensure you really understand that input. Once you understand that input and you begin to design your future direction, you will see which pieces of input help bring you along the direction you want to go. And you'll see which things will branch you out and detract potentially from your strategy. Okay. Again, this is not complicated work, but it's hard work because it means that you have to have more conversations. It means you have to ask more clarifying questions. And who among us has extra time to do all of that, right? I get it. I totally get it. Here's what I'm going to say. As leaders responsible for strategy, we need to get other stuff off our plate to lead strategy. And we need to make time for strategy. And so when you're doing your strategic planning, when you're beginning to plan for your strategic planning process, you really do need to build in and anticipate time for stakeholder engagement. And if you personally can't do it, who on your team can? Okay, because you really can't afford not to. You cannot afford to ask stakeholders questions and then just make assumptions about their input. You really need to be crystal clear on the conversations you're having. What are people into and what are they not into? And what are people on board with and what are they not on board with? And where do people see this organization going? And how is that the same or different based on their various stakeholder positions? Okay, because I could answer this question in a million different ways for a million different companies or organizations. It's all so dependent on your culture, on your missions, and on who you are as organizations. And really, I think just following the tactics we've laid out and trying to avoid these pitfalls will absolutely equip you to enter into effective strategic stakeholder engagement in your strategic planning. So long-winded answer. I know I threw a lot in there. Hopefully that answers the question. Please, if anyone else has other questions, thoughts, concerns, please pop them into the chat. Okay. Would you not also look to feedback, input, value, or yes, absolutely, Jay. Okay, so let me just back up 1 second. By no means am I saying that stakeholder engagement should be the only inputs into your strategic planning process. There are a ton of other inputs. There's your financial statements. There are program evaluations. There's, whatever. The list is too long for me to start rattling more off. Okay. You need to have all of that, as all of those need to be inputs into your strategic planning process. So I would look at impact, value, growth, ROI of programs, feedback we've gotten in the past, customer inputs. Whatever it is, all of that, Jay and et al., all of that needs to be an input into your strategic plan. Stakeholder engagement is just one portion of that and probably intersects in a lot of ways. So, but great question. So yeah, please, more questions. I'm happy to keep answering them in the chat or sharing, my knowledge best I can. But I'll leave you with this, tactically. Here's what you need to do to make a plan to get started. First, whoever you need to discuss with, I wouldn't recommend doing it alone. I think having at least one other person to help you map out your internal and external stakeholders, if not your entire strategic planning team, have everyone together do it. That's a great exercise. Okay, so I would start there. Start with knowing who your stakeholders are, map them out. Number 2, coordinate how you would engage them to collect their input. Again, we recommend a combination of surveys and sessions. So talking to people, to collect information, but also giving people the opportunity for written input. Oftentimes they can be more reflective, they can take more time, and the surveys we use are always anonymous, so we never attribute names or identities to information that comes through in our surveys. The third step is, after you've engaged your stakeholders, synthesize those inputs, sort them into key themes, and then bring those themes into your strategic planning process. And lastly, follow up with all the stakeholders. Everyone who you asked for input, follow back up with them. Make sure they know their input was brought into the process. Make sure they know what's going on. Make sure they understand how their input resulted in partially resulted in your strategic plan, how it helped influence your path. And make sure you're doing that, not only at the front end of the process, but also throughout your strategic planning process. And then once you're in actual implementation of your plan. Okay, so 4 simple points, again, not brain surgery, but things that if you hold yourself accountable to consistently implementing these items in any process, not just strategic planning, by the way, it will result in higher motivation, higher buy-in, higher engagement by your stakeholders. So that concludes the content that we've prepared for our session today. Again, if you're looking for more information, please reach out. Please visit our website. I popped the website into the chat earlier on. I'll bring it back for us just as a reminder. So our website is smestrategy.net. Lots of great resources on stakeholder engagement, strategic planning, and a lot of other strategy and leadership related items. But also want to really strongly encourage you, if you haven't yet, to please consider joining our strategy and leadership community. It's basically like a mini Facebook for us strategy nerds. And right now, if you join right now, once you join, you will be locked into free lifetime community membership. Eventually, we are going to be charging for membership. But anyone who signs up before we start charging will get locked in for free forever. And this will get you access to expert consultants, not just us at SME Strategy, but all of the almost 400 leadership professionals who are in the community already. You will have access to live events like this, our webinars. We also do exclusive community-only Q&As and trainings, and we have a lot of that planned for the new year. And you'll see some curated content. So I mentioned there's a boatload of stuff on our website. We actually curate the best of the best and send it to the community: articles, videos, presentations. We'll post the recording to this webinar there so that you can always access it. Just like Facebook, you can save posts for future reference. You can direct message people. You can conversations have threads, so you can continue conversations in little side pockets, and ultimately you'll get to strengthen a connection or create a connection with almost 400 other strategy leaders across the globe. And so really our intention with this community is to build a platform for strategy leaders to connect. Ultimately, we say our strategy and leadership community is where leaders meet to talk strategy. And so that's what we hope you'll do. We hope you'll join us. We hope you'll pop in there. I'm always signed on pretty much, so I'm trying to always chat with people and post some good stuff. So I look forward to hopefully you all joining if you haven't already, and engaging with us there in the community as well. So that concludes our webinar for today. We will not have a webinar in the month of December. It has gotten a little too full for us, and I will be on the road for 3 weeks of December. And so unfortunately, we will not have a scheduled one for December, but stay tuned to our stuff wherever you pay attention to us. And we will be posting our schedule for the new year quite soon. So pay attention to that, and I hope to see you more in the new year. Appreciate y'all for being here today. And if you are in the community, please pop over there and let us know what you thought about this. Let us know if there's anything you still have questions about, and let's continue the conversation. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for being here today. Wish you all a very, very happy holiday season and a safe rest of 2023. and hopefully see you on the first webinar of 2024. Thanks, everyone. Be well.